Hey, it's David. The Middle Ages are some of the most fascinating years in history. It's a shame, really, that they get breezed over so much in high school and college history classes. They were known for knights and chivalry, trebuchets and castles, the Magna Carta, and the 100 Years' War. Oh, and let's not forget the Black Death. That was kind of important. But the Middle Ages also featured some crazy things that you just won't cover in your everyday world history class. How many of these crazy facts about the Middle Ages do you already know? 11. The Dark Ages weren't very dark after all. For some reason, the Middle Ages have this persistent reputation of being a dark time in world history. I mean, sure, if you lived through the 100 Years' War and the Black Death, you might not think you're living in the golden age of world history. But it really is a shame that reputation has persisted. The Middle Ages were actually some really exciting times for science and education. There were some pretty impressive thinkers in the Middle Ages, like the Venerable Bede, Roger Bacon, Fibonacci, Thomas Aquinas, and William of Ockham. Maybe you've heard of them. If not, you've definitely heard of the University of Paris, Oxford University, and Cambridge University. They all have one thing in common. They were born in the Middle Ages. I guess it wasn't so dark after all. 10. Team sports were way more exciting. Sports were just better in the Middle Ages, and that's a fact, Jack. Don't believe me? I present to you mob football, and yes, it is as glorious as it sounds. Here's how it worked. You and a few dozen or 100 of your closest friends and neighbors would challenge the village down the street to a friendly little match. The goal is simple. Get the ball back to your village's church porch by any means necessary. There were no limits on the number of participants and only 2 rules: no murder and no manslaughter. As you probably guessed, there were quite a few broken bones and accidental deaths. It turns out that the rulers don't exactly like villages fighting, almost to the death, over a ball. King Philip VI of France banned football in 1331, and King Edward III of England banned it in 1363. Yet, the sport remained popular for a couple centuries during the Middle Ages. Eventually, it would calm down a bit and organize into sports like soccer, rugby, and American football. Maybe that's how the next Barcelona v Real Madrid match should happen. That would be a real El Clasico. 9. Pointy-toed shoes were all the rage. The Middle Ages produced some footwear that will put your dad's grass-stained New Balances to shame. Krakows, named after Krakow, Poland, where they originated, arrived on the scene in the late 12th century and stubbornly persisted until the 15th century. These shoes featured a long, pointed toe called a polane that would be stuffed with moss to keep it rigid. Opulently wealthy men sometimes wore shoes with polanes so long they had to be tied to their knees so they could walk. Apparently, they were meant to show off wealth and masculinity, but my guess is they were just compensating for something. Oh, and one more thing. Krakows were definitely not recommended for combat. I'm sure if you've ever tried walking in diving flippers, you'd understand why. It's hard to imagine Jon Snow lasting so long in the Battle of Bastards if he were tripping over his polanes the whole time. Hopefully, children of the Enlightenment look back at their grandparents' Krakows the same way we look back at tie-dye t-shirts and bell-bottoms, with disdain and embarrassment. 8. Roman numerals were cool until they weren't. Next time you scratch your head trying to figure out when Super Bowl 48 happened, you should send a little shout out to the medieval travelers who brought Arabic numerals to Europe. Hindu Arabic numerals first popped up in India sometime between the 1st and 4th centuries. By the 830s, Arabic mathematicians adopted the system and spread it across the Middle East and into North Africa. After studying in North Africa, Italian mathematician Leonardo Fibonacci brought the Hindu Arabic number system back to Europe in 1202 with his book Liber Abaci. European academics bought into the system pretty quickly, and by the 15th century, Arabic numerals had almost completely replaced Roman numerals for everyday use. Thanks, Fibonacci. 7. Animals could be tried for crimes. Back in the Middle Ages, if an animal committed a crime, they could be tried in court just like a person. They were even given a defense lawyer. Animal trials were apparently so common that E.P. Evans published a book called The Criminal Prosecution and Capital Punishment of Animals in 1906. One particularly hilarious case Evans shares in his book involves rats being sent a friendly letter of advice in order to induce them to quit any house in which their presence is deemed undesirable. Imagine how much more interesting Judge Judy would be if this still happened today. 6. God determined your innocence in a trial by ordeal. Speaking of weird trials, people in the Middle Ages had some pretty strange ways to see if you were guilty of a crime. Let's just say they took the phrase trial by fire a little more literally than we do today. Basically, in trial by ordeal, the accused person would be subject to one or many dangerous acts to see if he were guilty. The premise was pretty simple. If the person were innocent, God would intervene to keep them from harm. If they were guilty, they would be hurt by the trial and then given their punishment. Usually, the punishment for pleading guilty was lighter than being found guilty by trial. As you can imagine, these trials were pretty easy to manipulate by the judge to get the result he wanted. Think the witch scene with Sir Bedivere and Monty Python in the quest for the Holy Grail. So, if she weighs the same as a duck, she's a witch. Basically the same logic. 5. Christian Crusaders sacked the largest Christian city in the world. You could probably fill this entire list of wild and crazy stories from the Crusades. After all, they were some of the best known events of the Middle Ages. The escapades of the Fourth Crusade may take the cake for the biggest change of plans in history, though. Pope Innocent III, those pesky Roman numerals again, called the Fourth Crusade in 1198 to reclaim Jerusalem from Muslim rule. By 1202, his army was assembled and sent out with specific instructions to not attack any Christian states. Well, apparently, telling a bunch of crusaders not to do something is like telling a bunch of kids to not touch the stove because it's hot. They obviously have to test and see. Fast forward a few months, and the crusaders are bummed out and strapped for cash when some guy says he will make a large donation to the crusade if they would go to Constantinople, the largest Christian city in the world, and overthrow the current emperor of the Byzantine Empire. No big deal, right? So, after besieging the city for 9 months and finally taking it over, the Crusaders terrorized the citizens and divided up the Byzantine Empire amongst themselves. Turns out a little extra cash and some pillaging seemed more exciting for the Crusaders than actually going to Jerusalem like they signed up to do. 4. They had their fair share of frisky literature. If you thought 50 Shades of Grey was so popular because it brought seduction into mainstream literature, you should probably think again. While the people of the Middle Ages may have a prudish reputation, promiscuity was just as prominent then as it is now. The Canterbury Tales is one of the best-known works of medieval literature, yet it has more sexy tales and crude jokes than a high school boy's locker room. If you read it in high school or college, you might not have noticed all the Middle English euphemisms, but they are definitely there. You'll have to look them up yourself since most of them are a little too R-rated for this list. 3. At one point, women ran the entire ale industry in England. The Middle Ages weren't exactly a time of great freedom for women, but there was at least one industry that they had complete control over. For most of the Middle Ages, women called brewsters basically ran the entire ale industry in England and most of Europe. Ale was a hot commodity during the Middle Ages because it was usually safer to drink than water. Unfortunately, it would spoil pretty quickly, so the women who brewed it would usually drink what they and their families could, then sell the rest. Soon, women were running taverns and alehouses all over Europe. It wasn't until the Black Death that demand for beer and ale rose so much that the larger operations in monasteries pushed the brewsters out of the market. So next time you get a cold one from your flannel-wearing, beard-bearing bartender, pour one out for the rock star women who built the industry. 2. Assassin was the name of a religious group who assassinated people. The Nizari Ismaili were a small renegade sect of Shiite Muslims that scared the living daylights out of everyone traveling through Syria. In Europe, they were simply known as the Assassins, which wasn't even an actual word, just a transliteration of the group's Arabic name. However, their guerrilla warfare put so much fear in the Crusaders that they actually started using their name to refer to someone that kills a powerful person. This reclusive little group lived in various mountain fortresses around Syria, staging unpredictable attacks against their enemies. Their first assassination happened in 1092 when a Nizari disguised as a Sufi mystic stabbed a Seljuk vizier in his own quarters. Their famed reputation made its way back to Europe after 2 assassins dressed as monks killed Conrad of Montferrat in broad daylight in Tyre on his way to be crowned King of Jerusalem. The Nizari terrorized Syria and the surrounding area for nearly 200 years before they were wiped out by the Mongols in 1260, but they were apparently so terrifying that even today, we still use their name for someone who kills a powerful person. That's pretty hardcore. 1. An African king had so much money, people couldn't describe it. Last but certainly not least, I present to you the richest man in the history of the world. Mansa Musa ruled the Mali Empire in the 14th century, where he built more wealth than you can possibly imagine. Seriously, combine the fortunes of Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and every Nigerian prince who emailed you wanting to give you $1 million, and you won't even come close to Mansa Musa's fortune. How big was his fortune, you ask? Well, big enough that when he took his Hajj to Mecca, he brought along tens of thousands of soldiers for the 4,000-mile journey. His caravan had so much gold that they actually caused a currency crisis in Egypt as they passed through. This guy was so stinking rich that people who wrote about their encounters with him basically just said he piled up money like Smaug in The Lord of the Rings. Modern commentators have just given up on trying to give his wealth a number in today's dollars. They all just say it was just so much you couldn't even comprehend it. I bet it was probably something close to the United States government national debt. That's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you are new, and check out any of these videos posted here.